Captain Paul for the locker room with my co-host Fajardo. How's it going, Fajardo?
I'm good, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good until I've seen a little bit of the hectic news going around the NHL. So is Babcock the monster that people are making him out to be? Now, there's a situation apparently of him asking to see photos on his players' phones. Paul Bissonette had a very, very hot take on that situation and kind of was, I would say, not necessarily happy with it. We're going to go right into the article and kind of break down this situation altogether because it's a very peculiar one, if I'm going to be honest with you. Currently, the NHL and NHLPA are reviewing the accusations that the Blue Jackets coach violated the players' privacy. And we'll just kind of go right into what Bissonette had to say. And he said this on an episode of the Spittin Chiclets podcast, which is a great hockey podcast, but this is definitely created a firestorm for Babcock and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So Bissonette says, so he gets to Columbus, and one of the first things he does is he calls in Boone Jenner, the captain of the effing team, and says, let me see the photos in your phone. I want to know the type of person you are, Bissonette said. Which, if true, that looks really, really bad, right? You know, like someone trying to access your phone and just like see some of maybe the humor or I don't know, man, just random stuff you could have on your phone, maybe explicit photos. That's not a great look. Yeah. Nobody should be asking to see your phone, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, technically you're right? But nowadays, I mean, any company looks into your socials, your social status, what you're doing, what you're posting. Like if you're in, let's say, the fire department, you could barely even have a social media, right?
Yeah.
So that goes across all the states. Like if you have any type of social media, you can't really post anything without permission that has any of your anything from your workplace and things like of that nature. You can't really say anything that might go against what your company stands for. So I mean, lately the world itself is getting to that point where they're invading a lot of your privacies.
Yeah,
I continue with this though.
I agree with you on that aspect, but the problem, I guess the difference people would say is that it's not stuff they post on social media, it's stuff on their personal phone.
Of
right.
Course. Yep.
First off, I'll say, folks, don't put anything too crazy on your phone in the first place. That's a whole different conversation. But Babcock has definitely gone against this notion, saying it was irresponsible and completely inaccurate, Bissonette's characterization of the events. And this is what he had to say. While meeting with our players and staff, I asked them to share off their phone family pictures as part of the process of getting to know them better. There was absolutely nothing more to it than that. The way this was portrayed on the Spittin Chiclets podcast was a gross misrepresentation of those meetings and extremely offensive. These meetings have been very important and beneficial, not only for me, but for our players and staff as well. And to have them depicted like this is irresponsible. And to have them depicted like this is irresponsible and completely inaccurate. And it's not like it's just Babcock coming out here and saying that. Boone Jenner publicly talked about. Boone Jenner had this to say. While meeting with Babs, he asked me about my family and where I'm from and my upcoming wedding and hockey-related stuff. And he then asked if I had pictures of my family, and I was happy to share some with him. He showed me pictures of his family. I thought it was a great first meeting and a good way for us to start to build a relationship. To have this blown out of proportion is completely disappointing. I'm not going to go into the Commodore because it's in here. For y'all that follow the situation, Commodore absolutely hates Babcock, and Babs, up to this point, I think you have a reason to hate him, but I'm looking at this situation just right now. And it's not just Boone Jenner who's come out, right? Mm-hmm. Johnny Gaudreau also had some statements on this whole situation. He said, I was a little upset how it got kind of blown out of proportion there. Told Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts. It sucks to see how it got blown out in the wrong direction. And he goes on to say, it was his way of kind of getting to know me, and I got to get to know him. I wasn't uncomfortable at all. I was showing him pictures of my family. If I had a problem with it, I would have been like, I don't think I'm comfortable with that, but I had no problem with it. Goudreau explained Babcock initiated the exchange by saying, I want to get to know you. Show me some pictures of your family, what you like to do in the summer, things you did this summer. So I pulled up the pictures. Goudreau says he was happy to share photos of his 10-month-old daughter, Noah. I've never had a coach take a direction like that and to get to know me on a personal level like that right off the bat. And it was the first time I ever met him. He showed me a few things about his family and I kind of talked about his kids, his wife, and the dogs that he's watching now. We got to know each other that way. Then we got right into the hockey after. When someone asks to see your family, I love my family. A big reason why I chose Columbus is I wanted to be around them more. That's important to me. I think it's a great idea for somebody to get to know me is to getting to know my family. You know, Baz was thinking of flying down to Jersey and spend an afternoon at my house getting to know me and my family. It didn't work out that way, but he was planning to do it. Okay. I'm sorry. This shit's getting blown out of fucking proportion. I get it. Babcock doesn't have the greatest track record. What he did with Mitchell Marner, you know, having like a work ethic thing where rating his teammates' work ethic and then him publicly saying, oh, this is what Marner thinks of your work ethic as him as a rookie. And some of the foolishness he's done with Chelios in the past. Listen, Babcock, we had the conversation when he was hired. A little bit overrated of a coach, in my personal opinion. And I think the off-ice problems he had just weren't worth it. But I'm not judging him on his past at this point. The Columbus Blue Jackets want to give him another shot. He went, coached the university level up in Canada, right? Had no issues there. Talked about, being more about mental health and being more aware. And, I got to be fair to Babcock. He said everything right in his opening press conference, admitted he had some faults that he had to work on. I believe people can change. I believe people can evolve. And to consider this like Babcock is just asking for explicit photos on a dude's phone and not trying to get to know the family and stuff like that. When you have players on the team outright coming and just saying like, hey, like he was just looking into family, wanting to get to know you on a more personal level. For a guy that struggled to, I would say, relate with his players in the past because he was having more of that like general, that U.S. Army general type mentality, that dictator admittedly type personality, right? He's trying to be more personable, trying to be a little bit more of a personal connection with his players. I don't see the problem with that. And I like Paul Bissonette. I love what he does on TNT. I love the Spittin Chiclets podcast. And with Mike Commodore, I understand why he hates Babcock, but I have to take things he says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
If I have players on the team outright saying like, hey, like he was just trying to get us to know us, like, why is this like, oh, we got to fire Babcock. We got to do that's an invasion of privacy. You're a grown ass man, in my opinion, right? If you don't want somebody on your fucking phone, tell them to fuck off. That's my personal opinion. Like, if you don't want somebody on your phone, you don't have to give them your phone.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts before I go on a whole rant?
I was letting you rant, my brother. Sometimes you just need to go on it, right? Yeah. So, I've managed for over 20 years. Yeah, I'm old. Thanks. And with that being said, like, one of the approaches I take with all my employees is I do take a similar approach where I get to know them on a personal level, so that way in my mind I kind of know the characteristics that I'm working with, right? So I can better and effectively manage them to the best of my abilities, right? Because if I know that someone has a child who's sick, I know that, okay, be prepared, because there are going to be a lot of times when they're going to have to call out. It's not going to be because they want to call out or things of that nature, right? And be ready for that. If I have someone else who has maybe a sick family member, knowing things like that allows me to know, okay, maybe for this next month while they're helping that family member, they're going to be a little flimsy on their scheduling. Make sure I schedule around that, right? Make sure that I always ask them if they're okay, if they need any more time, and then work how I have to work around all of their personal issues, right? It's a very difficult job managing at any level and in any job, whether it's a hockey team, whether it's managing people at a CVS, whether it's managing people at a stadium, on an ambulance company. It doesn't really matter where, but you kind of have to have some type of knowledge of the employees that are working for you, because if you're not doing the right thing for everybody, all you're gonna do is having a revolving door where they come in, once they're tired of you, they get out, and you don't really want them. You're trying to build, success.
Yep.
And when you're building a team, right, you want to build for success. You don't want to build like all right, this is how it's gonna go. Obviously, he already has that history. He's done that. He sees how it doesn't work. So his new approach is like, all right, let me get to know you. So like he changed in that aspect to like, hey, I gotta connect. I gotta connect so that they understand that my mentality is for their best as their manager. And I think that connecting with them on that level is gonna help them understand him and him to understand them when they're struggling or when they need a pick-me-up, like what gets him going. Have a better idea of all these things. How else are you going to manage these guys? You're going to be just like a fan and not a manager. You're going to be like a fan. Oh, that person sucks. Oh, that you don't know what's going on, but they do.
Well, and the problem I have with this, right, is like we criticize Babcock, and rightfully so. Some of the shit he did was dumb, right? Let's just call it what it is. It was old school. But I even say I hate using that as a shield for the stupid behavior, right? He was just dumb, right?
Yeah.
The guy's trying to change. He's trying to be more, I would say, have a better, maybe like a better personal connection, but a better, like, have better emotional intelligence. So he's like, okay, like, before I was too much of a hard ass, I was too detached. Let me get to know people. Like, let me try to be a better person. And it's like, you can't win with him, right? Like, he's trying to be a better version of himself. He's trying to do the right thing. And apparently one player was very upset, but I'm like, as a grown man, right? If you have a problem with somebody going in your phone, say something. You don't need to go to the media. You don't want to get like listen, like Babs. No, man, no offense, just some personal stuff on there. And if he makes a big deal out of it, just be like, dude, like that's my own personal business. But I feel like because Babcock has such a negative stigma about him, right? Even the small shit like this gets blown way out of proportion. We're having the NHL and the NHLPA looking into this. Like Babcock just like got a police baton and started beating one of the rookies, right? This is ridiculous to me. And I get it. You can hate the guy. And you know what? I said in my video, I'm kind of questioning him being signed to Columbus, but he's signed. Give him the opportunity, right? If he goes out of pocket and he starts doxing people, fine. Dude just wanted to have a personal connection. For me, kind of correlating to my own job in the maritime industry, right? The best captains I worked with, right, worked under. We had good work relationships. We got to know each other, got to know each other's families. Like my last captain I just worked for was one of the worst I ever had. He was just all about himself and his snacks. That's all he cared about. Right? Didn't care about his crew, if I'm being very frank. And to me, I respect the hell out of an older guy who used to coach a certain way, trying new tactics and trying to evolve over time. I'm never going to shout that down. And when he was in the university, nobody complained about him. He had a bunch of, he spoke glowingly about the people in his community. And it's weird for me because I'm sitting here like I'm some big Babcock fan because I'm really not. But this particular situation, I'm just looking at it, and it's like, really? Are we this soft these days that asking like, oh, let me see your family and like what you like to do? That's a huge invasion of privacy. I don't know.
Listen. Honestly, this just became the dating show, right? Because what happens when people are trying to turn that new leaf from going from being some type of way, right? And then they're trying to do the right thing, and the person that they're dating now is like, oh, they're great, but then what happens? You get the people that dated them in the past are like, nah, they ain't like that. Be careful, blah blah, all this, and then as soon as anything, they blow it out of proportion. Whether you're a male or female or whatever you identify as, right? It happens to everybody. Whenever you're trying to change something, there's always somebody from your past that comes back and blows the smallest thing out of proportion and makes your life difficult. Yeah. And this is one of those situations where they're trying to make Babcock's life, completely difficult. And it's bad enough that the team itself had, already had a bad stigma after last season where they were expected to do so much. and they did so little.
Yeah.
You know,
They got Fantilli in the draft. That's how bad they did.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's one of those situations where you're trying to get away from that, right? And now you're kind of shitting on the coach that they're bringing in, and the new tactic that he's trying, so he can change his way, so that they can both grow together in the same direction. Like, let them live. Let them live.
I mean, if there was something truly egregious, Columbus would have fired him already. Right?
100%.
And I like Paul Bissonette. I love the Spittin Chiclets podcast. I try to watch all their episodes, right? I think they're amazing for the hockey community. They kind of helped really popularize hockey more in the podcast space. But I don't know who his report was or where he got that from and stuff like that. If it comes out that he just got one player that was upset with it and everybody else was fine with it, like, that doesn't really look great on him, right? And like I said, Commodore is just he's gonna hate Babcock until he's dead. Like, Babcock could cure cancer, and Commodore be like, well, he didn't cure AIDS, you know, like, it's just so, like, I think for me, Commodore, I take things with a grain of salt, and I understand why he's frustrated. Babcock did him kind of dirty, but I mean, I don't know, man. I think we're at a point in time where we're getting a little bit too soft with some of this stuff. If you had an issue with someone taking, like, you know, I don't want you seeing my family, then don't show it. That's it. Yeah. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Am I missing something? Because I just don't get this, personally.
Let's see. Maybe he did it. Clickbait. Wow. A word we've heard a lot recently. That's why he did it, right? He probably did it. He probably did it because anybody who does any type of work, right, when it comes to acting or anything like that, you always know that good or bad is always good. When you get nothing, that's not good.
That's a fair point.
And right now, it's been a pretty, you know, like, dead off season. You want to kind of start the season off with some spice? Well, here you go. You got some spice thrown in there, right? And now eyes are on him and what his show is going to do. What all the shows that he's incorporated, you know, with are going to do. I just think it's one of those situations where he may have said something to kind of just get people's attention or whatever, just spice things up and become, like, you know, headlines going into the season, and, you know, probably.
But there's so much other better headlines, in my opinion. Like, listen, if it turns out Babcock just started taking people's phones or did something a little bit over the extra, and, like, more news comes out, then yeah, fine. I can understand that's a huge breach of privacy. Get rid of him. But it seems like that's not the case. There's so many better storylines, like Connor Bedard with Chicago, right? Taylor Hall gets traded over there. You could talk about that, right? Fantilli and Columbus itself, right? With Fantilli, the guy that we all thought was going to go number 2, right? He's going to be the franchise center over there. You know, Leo Carlson there with the Ducks. It's just you got a lot of great young storylines you could talk about. I mean, what will you see, like, next season? Will the Rangers, the young kids, take, like, the next step? Like, there's so much stuff to talk about in the hockey realm, right? That I get it. This is hot. This is, you know, you can get people to like, really talk about the subject and maybe get the hockey market pumping. But I just, the reporting like this, if it does, and like it's right now, seems like to be a little bit of an overreach. I don't know. It's just not the greatest look.
Yeah. I mean, if it turns out to be nothing, shame on you. Like, you definitely should not have done that. You know what I mean? It's one of those where, unless you're going to turn around and tell us who your real source was that told you something different, and, you know, then everybody can, you know, point their anger at that person. Of course he's not going to do that. But unless you're doing that, you're going to have to take the heat for this one if it goes away where he did nothing. Yeah. And it was simple. Now, if he did something, kudos to you for taking all the heat right now, you know, but we'll see. I
mean, we'll see. It's gonna be very interesting. Let me know. Let us both know your comments down below. Like, do you think that Babcock should be fired for the Columbus Blue Jackets? Yes or no? And then go into an explanation for why he shouldn't be fired or why he should be fired. So, good video. It was a good conversation there. Me and Fajardo will be bringing a lot of different hockey content throughout the season. So make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Hit that like button. Anything else to add there before we get out of here?
No, not really. I'm happy to be back. A lot more coming.
Absolutely. So I'm Captain Paul. That is Fajardo. We're the Locker Room, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.